Well, happy Valentine's Day, and welcome again to the last day of the 11th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference presented by Northeastern State University. I'm Bob Hales. I'm your moderator for this session. And for one more time, as a reminder, all of our sessions are closed caption. To view the caption, simply click on the closed caption icon, at the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. Today's session is using artificial intelligence and natural language processing to measure and improve engagement, sentiment, and influence in online learning, beginning the journey. We have with us John Hilsman, who's going to I think show us an interesting application that I think can be helpful to us. So John, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks everyone for attending. My name is John Hilsman. I am the CEO of a company called Access Alliance for Education, but also work with several different suppliers of technology to accelerate learning. And one of them is a company called Rally, which has a technology that I want to talk to you about the research on today. They're using artificial intelligence and natural language processing to measure and improve the engagement, sentiment, and influence in online learning. And they're just starting out. So what I wanted to do is share some of the research with you today in regards to how they're looking at it, looking at some of the current challenges, the relevancy and need for engagement, some of the definitions, research, and background that they're utilizing, showing how they're using the AI and NLP to measure the engagement. And then they've extended the focus out of engagement into mood, sentiment, influence, and facilitation, other areas. Share with you some of the early feedback that they've done in conjunction with folks helping them with this research. And then also enable some time for questions and next steps, et cetera, to fill you in on it. So go ahead and getting started. As you folks probably live every day, we know both in corporate training and in education, higher education, one of the concerns is engagement, and that there's a large deal of online, whether it's a MOOC, whether it's a full semester course. On average, online course dropout can range from 40 to 80%, and in some cases can even exceed 90%. So keeping students engaged and motivated throughout that process is a very, very important factor. We even know in the recent study by Wiley and Learning House that discussion forums, which are a significant part, only 66% of respondents say that even the forums are engaging, which again leaves a large opportunity for improvement in that engagement cycle within the online classrooms. Most importantly, we now live in what we're terming a relationship economy. You think about social media and you think about the ways that people are connecting virtually and globally across the world. We know that now we're entering an age of what we're calling a relationship economy. And we know that programs that need to succeed in this relationship economy, whether they're a training program within a corporate setting, whether they're an online program, they really have to have listening as the epicenter of this online retention mode, whether it's a student, whether it's a corporate employee, whoever it may be, and as their epicenter of that retention and engagement strategy across the board. Obviously, user engagement with an online learning platform is required for the retention, help learning, help performance. These are all sort of byproducts of that engagement. And presently, what we found when they started the project is that there's not a lot of research available addressing the latent engagement measurements. So how are we measuring engagement within those online settings, and what are we doing to improve that engagement within them? So the definition that Rally is using for online engagement is a multidimensional construct having three subdimensions, and those are a cognitive engagement, a behavioral engagement, and an emotional engagement. The cognitive engagement is defined as the extent to which the individuals are paying attention and processing the information that's being presented. So how do we process that information that's coming to us and being presented? Behavioral is defined as the extent to which individuals exert the effort or are participating or are involved with the task at hand. The emotional engagement is defined as the extent to which the individuals are enjoying the task or the experience of being within that online and virtual setting. So we know that most online platforms provide two functionalities to facilitators or instructors, and these are very important. So it provides the tools and interfaces to create those learning interventions. So the content that you give them, the quizzes, the calls to action that you may have within that environment. But it also provides for a non-intrusive measurement technique to reliably measure the effect of these interventions. And this can all be done in the background using technologies that are now available. Online learning platforms provide intervention tools and interfaces to engage individuals in all of these different dimensions. And at the same time, the platforms can also respond and log the response of individuals that can be used to analyze and improve the quality of the learning over the platform within these dimensions as well. So let me give you a basic example. So let's talk about a quiz question during a lecture video. In just looking at the quiz questions themselves, they're an intervention, right? So they're intended to increase the cognitive engagement. They're intended to find out what a student knows and engage them on a cognitive basis. So a correct answer provided by the student would show that, hey, he or she is cognitively engaged with the content at hand. That's a measurement that we can track very easily. At the same time, someone's refusal or acknowledgement to skip that question might demonstrate not only a cognitive point of view, but also a low behavioral point of view. In other words, they're not engaging with that. Their behavior is changing. So a single intervention can reach people on many different subdimensions within the engagement factor. So here, where the interface or tool provides the quiz question during the video represents an intervention, and that can affect all the latent engagement within that student's interaction, and it can get manifested in those actions, which the platform can actually log. So we can gather that data based on that reaction on these different levels. So when the researchers and OnQ, the OnQ area of Raleigh thought about this, they said, is there a way that we can actually score this? Is there a way to create an engagement score within the online environment? And can we do this for any piece of content as a function of the user action within the platforms themselves? And so what they looked at is they're looking at it not only from the experience by individuals over the platform, but individuals over the platform geared to specific content. And what types of content could this be? Well, obviously it could be multimedia, it could be an article, it could be a PDF, it could be external or internal resources, it could be a quiz, it could be a discussion. Many different interventions are used within the practice, and many other areas of engagement exist within the practice of online learning. So what's unique about it, though, and what's interesting about it is that a user may perform a set of common actions on each type of content. In other words, there may be ways that they engage by viewing or scrolling or doing other things with each type of content, but there may be specific actions that you're asking them to do that would only apply to specific types of content. So let's say a quiz, and then there will be several actions behind that quiz. So the idea here is to understand, can we score it across these different pieces of content and across the different subdivisions or subdimensions within it. So what the researchers and Raleigh have put together is they wanted to classify these user actions on those three engagement subdimensions. And they wanted to build the individual engagement scores for each of those subdimensions. And then what they wanted to do is kind of present an overall score as the sum of these different dimensions of engagement that are possible within the platform as a start. And the way to do that is obviously through machine learning, taking the pulse of what's going on. Also, one of the key challenges they found in building the engagement score is to develop determine the weights of each activity. So how do we weigh each of the activities or actions that may be taking place within the engagement factor? And what they did is they looked at some prior research that suggests determining the weights in proportion to the relative effort required to perform the particular task was an avenue that they wanted to pursue. And so what they decided to do is to check out what is the effort behind these things as we're doing them. So let me give you another example. An example would be the effort required to write a comment within a piece of content or within an online activity is higher compared to clicking a like button, right? It takes more effort. So the activity weighted towards the comment should be higher compared to the like activity because there's a larger behavioral commitment, there's a larger engagement factor allowed there. So this approach provided for the order of weights for each activity. However, it didn't really provide for the quantification of these weights within the activity. So solving the challenge of determining the weights towards the activity, what they decided to use as a baseline to begin with is using the frequency of the occurrence within the user base. So around any piece of content, so the action to like a piece of content is probably more common and occurs more frequently compared to a comment, because a comment obviously takes more effort. And it's much easier for a person to click on that like button and move forward from it. So what they decided to do is also quantify the weights by the frequency at which they're used. Thus, the overall engagement score is represented as the sum of the score for these individual subdimensions of the engagement with the weighting in each. And we'll get into that in more detail in a second. So users on the learning management platform experience these different dimensions of engagement, as we talked about, and it leads to their subsequent actions. Again, those three areas are cognitive, behavioral, and emotional. And the different dimensions of engagement experienced by users can all lead to different actions, as we know. So the question is, how do I weight each of those individuals within the sum of the content, and how do I weight the content as an overall piece of content? So as an example, a higher emotional engagement from a user may lead to them experiencing positive emotions, which may get manifested in actions such as reactions on the platform. I like this. I'm happy. I agree. Those types of things. So we first categorized, they went through the research and categorized the group and user activities on these different levels of dimension of engagement. So looking at the sub levels of dimension of engagement. Now, each of these areas and activities, for instance, liking, are not mutually exclusive, and an activity may be more than one engagement or subgroup at the time. So clicking on an action leads to engagement. Clicking on an action, depending upon what you clicked on, would lead to an emotional or a behavioral engagement as well. So it cuts through all the subdimensions in each of these classifications. So again, the power of artificial intelligence and the power of machine learning has led them to continually classify these activities on an ongoing basis, as well as the definitions of engagement within the dimensions of engagement via this machine learning. So as it's teaching itself to understand these factors better through the artificial intelligence, the system is refining itself over a period of time. Is that making sense? I hope so far. Then you enter the use of this AI algorithm and the machine learning underneath the platform. So what they have chosen to do is in the platform itself, their technology is allowing it to ping the user about every 4 to 8 seconds to gather data on the user. And what that's enabling them to do, some very powerful things using AI and NLP behind the scenes, is, as an example, it doesn't matter whether there's 10,000 people or 2 people in it. About every 4 to 8 seconds, they're forming an instantaneous word cloud to develop and determine relevant comments. So that in the user flow and in the user experience, you may have 10,000 people there. And if you've ever been on Twitch or any streaming type of platform where there are many users on, it looks like a waterfall going by. Well, what they're utilizing AI and NLP to do is to gather a cloud immediately using those comments, form that cloud, and bring to the surface the most pertinent and most relevant comments that are happening within the 10,000 people. So it's a more user interface type of use, where they're only showing the most pertinent comments to the users within the group. It's reading the language for each user in a contextual, not contentual, contextual purposes. So it's reading the language of everyone as a group, and it's also reading individuals. So it's reading the language for all users for contextual purposes. And then it's scoring the engagement. And what they've done, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, is they've broadened that beyond just the engagement to understand what is the sentiment within that context, what's the influence of that user within the group. And this is all based on the user language and the actions that they're taking within So examples of the activities that would be measured within these AI and NLP in the cognitive engagement area. So again, remember, this is where they're utilizing their cognitive or intellectual effort to complete the task. So things that you could measure right off the surface would be things like the number of questions answered by a user related to the piece of content, the average response length of the user for that piece of content, what type of language are they using, et cetera, the time duration for which the user viewed the content. So how long were they involved in the content? The number of comments used by a user, and many, many more under the surface. I'm just sort of showing you on the cognitive side some of the ones that would be basic and at the top level. In the behavioral side, some of the easy ones to notice is the number of times the user would view the content. So over a period of time, whether it's an assignment, whether it's a class, how many times did they come back into an individual piece of content? How many times did they revisit that content? What was the duration of each of those visits? What's the number of times the user interacted with interventions or calls to actions, say quizzes, links, discussions, resources within the content? And again, many, many, many others underneath the surface here. And then the last is the emotional area. So what is the user liking or disliking through the content based on their language? What is the language and the contextual basis telling you within the measurements? And then the other is obviously much more pronounced in that if there are emojis available within the platform, which there are in the OnCue platform, they can obviously select one of those emojis and state their emotional reaction that way. And again, there's much more going on underneath the surface in regards to the language processing and the algorithm and machine learning. So what they did is they started with the engagement, and as they drew out the machine learning, they could see in their research that this could also be useful in the areas of mood or sentiment of the user, in the area of influence for the user, and in the area of moderation or facilitation of that piece of content, of that class, etc. I want to talk a little bit about those in earnest and show you, again, some of the top level things that they're doing. So within the OnCue platform, what they've designed is what they call an E-score. And the engagement score is determined by a lot of factors underneath the surface, but I just pulled some of them up to the top here. So their presence within the video, right? The percentage of the video a user watches. And again, remember, because they're pinging every 4 to 6 seconds within the mode here, they can see within the player, within the content, what's going on. The frequency, the total amount of time spent, the number of replays, the number of times someone does something, the interactions that they would have with that piece of content. Obviously, the more interaction, the more presence, the more frequency, the more activity drives up that E-score for a user within the piece of content. Mood and sentiment, again, the other side. So what are they reacting to? How are they commenting? The way that they're scoring the mood and sentiment is actually based on an M score of 50, which is a neutral mood. And so one would be an extremely negative type of comment or take you down to a negative type of score. And 100 would be a very positive score. So what they're doing is looking at the user reaction, the user languages, the comments that they're making to other users, etc., and gauging through all that language, through all those activities. Obviously, the more positive the interaction is, the higher the M score. And you can see on the right-hand side some of the definitions that we use, that they're using within the research here to accomplish that. The next area is influence. So the influence is determined by a user's influence with others within the conversation or others' actions towards them. So high influencers would be people with a high number of responses and reactions to their comments. And this can change over time, as you know. So one of the nice things about being utilizing this in a class or in an asynchronous environment is you may teach that content at the beginning of a semester, but people will come back to review it and questions will be asked about it, et cetera, et cetera. So people in that conversation can grow an influence over the period of time, over the semester in regards to that type of usage within the platform itself. And again, what they're measuring in that I-score is really advocacy, authority in the language, impact in the language, impact on others within the mode and their actions within the online learning environment. Then the last one, which is, I'm not sure how many instructors like this or don't like this. When I bring it up to some of the folks, they're like, what are you saying here? Moderation us, moderation of facilitators, etc. But it's also a great barometer. And so what they did is extended it in regards to how is the moderator reacting inside that overall experience. So are there tasks that they're taking longer to resolve? Are there questions to be answered? Those types of things. And what they're seeing with the AI and the NLP is they can also monitor the moderator or facilitator's actions with frequency, resolving tasks in a timely manner. Are they seeding the content? Are they prompting students? Are they doing things that would engage the student further within the platform? These are all things that can be measured as well. So what does it in practice look like? What is this thing that you've described from the research here? And so it's a learning solution called OnCue, and it was developed basically to give students a deeper experience. But what they want to do is use it more on a player surface. So it would use your site, your content, be integrated with all of that. And it integrates this viewing experience into this social environment. But as I said, it provides these detailed insights on the learners and the coursework in the background. So think of it, if you would, on a screen here. Transforms the watching into an interactive and engaging experience, very similar to a lot of technologies have this capability. I'm thinking about VoiceThread and some of the others that are out there right now, where you're able to interact on a social basis or in a community setting or on a socially engaging experience. But what's happening in the background is all of this is being read, and all of this language is being read. And if there were 10,000 students here, you can see here's the college, here's the responding with, share your thoughts. This is a prompt from the facilitator. So they can do this over any piece of content that's out there within the player itself. They have patents on this back end. As I said, based on the research they've done, they have 6 patents in the areas of engagement, sentiment, and influence. And obviously, it allows you to fuel the learning. So it allows the transformation of the online interactivity and engagement, as we've talked about, and enable those conversations around lectures, interviews, webinars, and monitor and score the analysis. So let me jump out of this and kind of go into a live version of the content or of the player itself. I'm going to start with this piece of content here. This is Jay Abramson, who's a senior lecturer at Arizona State University. And I'm just going to play this so that you can see how the player can be used. And then we'll get into the background and what's going on behind the scenes as well. By the way, this is a little bit older version. This is the version 2 of the player that this video was done in. So I'll show you a more updated version as we move forward. We just have not transferred Jay's videos to the updated version. So I can come in here, and any student obviously could be already in as a single sign-on. It could be done through LTI and the LMS. Many different ways to access the content. We can talk about it in different ways. I'm just going to put my name in here. John, I'm a student. I'm going to save that display name in avatar. And what you'll see here is now what's coming up on the right-hand side is this is the facilitator. Thanks for joining us for Algebra Essentials, joining the conversation. And I can, much like any of the other technologies, I can comment at any point in time in an asynchronous environment or a live synchronous environment in regards to this. And what will happen is it will enable me, you'll see here now, that is tagged in the video at the time that I put it in. So anyone coming later will see my comment at that point in time in the video itself. So you can also have calls to action that leads to prompts outside the content itself. So, you can lead people onto other resources, onto other videos, onto other types of things by these calls to action within the video itself. And also you can see questions here in the video asked by students within the content itself. there's a sort of an overview of academic use of the content. You could put polls in here. I'll show you a lot more as we get into the third, the version 3 player here in the demo. And for that player, I'm going to go into, this is the new interface for professors and managers of content. I can view all my conversations here. I can see all my conversations here. I'm going to click on this one using athletics here. And what you'll see in the background, say this was a course or a piece of, a lot of people are using it for marketing and other things. I have all my reports back here. And what I can see in here is I can see the score for that piece of content in regards to its engagement. I can also see its a user score. So this would be each of the folks using the content. So these would be each of the students in my class, and I can see their engagement scores here. I can click on an individual student and dig deeper into what their engagement has been with this piece of content. So I can see their engagement score here. I can see their M score or mood score here. I can see their I score here. I can see the comments they made, the reactions. If I need to suppress or flag a comment or do something different within the content, I can do it here. I can see if they've answered any questions. I can see their discussion replies, short answer, multiple choice quizzes, etc. I can see a lot of what's going on with the student simply by seeing this. And then if I need to dig in further in any of these areas, I can go in here and see the comments that they've made in regards to the content. In addition to that, I can also get an overview. I can create a conversation around my piece of content within this manager and player here. So as an example, if I wanted to create a piece of content, I can do it very quickly. I can go out to YouTube or wherever I need to go. If I have an MP4, I can just put the title in here. I can go ahead, I'll click out to YouTube here and I'll do, I don't know if Bob has content in here or not, but let's see. I'll do YouTube Northeastern. And let's pick this. I don't know what this is. We'll just grab a piece of content here. And I can go ahead and grab this piece of content here. Sorry. I can place it right in here. I can click on that. It will then allow me to grab the media. So if I want to do an MP4, I want to do anything like that, it will enable me to go ahead and I zoom thing in the way here. I can copy that. I can put the media in here. And you'll see that it can be any type of media that I need it to be. I can click on that. I can create the media. And there it is in the player itself. I can go ahead and review this as far as user cases and things that I want to do. So if I want to limit who can come in, anyone may interact with an account or come in through the LMS, I can set all that up in here. I can do different settings in comments, allow certain things. I can put in calls to action, quizzes, whatever the case might be. I can add comments. I can set a date for when I want this published or when I want the assignment out or when I want that video to be available to the students. I can just click on that. And then I can share either through Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or email if I want to. I can do a simple inline code copy, or I can do an embed code copy for a website. I'm going to go ahead and capture this copy here. I'm just going to go out and put it on in the browser here. And you'll see that this is already in the overview player. I can click on this. And as an example, when a student comes in to comment, they can comment in many different formats. So they can comment with a video, they can comment with an image, they can comment with an audio, or they can comment recording a video off their own computer at that time. They can create a video link, which allows for deeper types of engagement as well in regards to it. I can comment to everyone, or I can comment to the professor or facilitator if I only want to do that. In addition to that, we have these different views here. And I can see that there's no activity here when I click on the view to see the comments here because there are no comments in this. If I come back over to the Loyola video as an example here, I can see that there are several comments within the video here. I can also see that how many active users are within my conversations. If I click on an individual conversation here, you can see that Loyola or Northeastern one is already loaded here. And if I click on this, I can see reports, again, in regards to that piece of content. I can close this. I can see analytics. Where are people coming from? So in this case, we have 12 people from Canada, 263 from the US who have made comments, etc. I can see what device was utilized to interact with the content. Exactly. So it gives me a lot of different powerful annotations behind the area. In addition to that, when I click on a piece of content, I can also see different views of the content. So as an example, if I'm a professor and I only want to see the comments behind the content, I can go ahead and read through them here using this toggle switch. In addition to that, I can also do just the video view if I want. I can also share this out, as I mentioned, through those different channels if I need to, and have comments on those as well. That gives you some look at the actual player itself in regards to it. So what is the data that's being gathered behind the scenes here? All types of things. So depending upon what you want to gather, as you saw, there's a lot of data that I didn't even surface in those reports and in those areas that we can dig deeper into and present. But as a general rule, you're going to want to know, hey, how are they engaging along the timeline with a piece of content? You can see the trends. Is a student going up in their engagement score? Are they going down in their engagement score? Which will enable you to create interventions or other things that may help you throughout the semester or throughout the course in regards to creating content. There is also an overview within the piece of content itself that will enable you to give a graph view of that piece of content. So you can actually look at the piece of content that you've made, and you can look at it over a period of time to see. As an example, we can look at different things. So as an example, here's student performance. Here's a single student performance in some of the areas that you can search within the user details. So as an example, this student watched 94% every time they played it. So per play, and remember, we're pinging them during that period of time so we know when they've skipped an area and know when they've not watched the full thing. But when they do watch it, 90% of the time, they do follow it through to completion. 77% of the time, they were in focus on the conversation, again, through some sort of action or some sort of movement. Their E-score, their M-score, the activity, the days available, video length, and many, many more details and data are underneath the surface here in regards to each of the students. As an example, I showed you this before. It's just a quick overview of an individual student, how they're interacting around that individual piece of content or within the course as a whole. And you can also take a class or a piece of content and look at it over a period of time. So let's say that we wanted to look at several semesters or over a period of time, we were able to gauge several different instructors using a piece of content. What were the certain questions coming up where within the piece of content? How might we change that piece of content? How might we inform instructors around that piece of content where they may be getting a whole bunch of questions around a certain point in the piece of content? How engaged are students overall against that piece of content? Is there a high engagement rate? Does there tend to be a good reaction or positive comments from reactions within the content? Is there an ability for influencers within that piece of content? So who in my class might I rely on to influence others within the coursework in the classroom that we are utilizing? As I mentioned, they have the 6 patents. Obviously, these are largely have to do with the mapping and the data in the background, the utilization of the word clouds and those types of things that they're doing in the background. And they have 6 additional patents that are in process right now waiting to be issued based on the continuing research that they're doing. And as a whole, OnCue has been around for almost 3 years. And as I said, they're continuing to do research, continuing to refine this idea of engagement, influence, mood, sentiment in the background within the use. One of the surveys that they have been able to do is, and by the way, they're partnered with the University of South Florida in regards to some of this research. They did a sort of a simple survey type of engagement in regards to the utilization of OnCue, and what students tended to experience was a higher social connection and a greater cognitive and emotional engagement. So when they surveyed the students after utilizing OnCue in 2018 behind the coursework, in their research, they found that the students on average showed about a 254% better experience than they had had in previous types of engagements. In addition to that, they're also now being recognized by some of the industry in regards to what they're doing with the research and what they're doing with this tool. They were nominated in 3 of the categories by the EdTech Digest folks a year ago in regards to video-based learning solution, the best emerging technology solution, and best corporate training solution. Because remember, it can be utilized both in higher ed and in corporate training. It's also utilized as a marketing, branding, community activation tool, all sorts of different use cases for the technology. Within education, obviously, the engagement of the learner, that's what we're talking about today, the use of it in those types of environments. The use of training faculty could also be used in those types of environments. It can be used from a marketing perspective to attract new students. We already have signed a couple of companies, corporations that are using it for customer service and greatly reducing their cost and time on the phone with folks, where they're playing tutorials of videos. So things like IT, help desks, and other things, it could be utilized greatly there, where students could respond to a video tutorial on a given piece of solution, and then the help desk could answer those questions via text or via video or some other way. And obviously people are using it in all sorts of communications for messaging, cultural responses. A lot of corporations are using it for town halls and getting a gauge of listening to their employees and feedback on employees, those types of things as well. What's happening with the solution itself, its availability, the next steps, they've really been kind of focused on perfecting the tool and perfecting the use cases. And so it'll be launching the end of the first quarter here in a SaaS version for anyone to try, both a trial and starter package where you can wrap certain pieces of content. Then there would be different stages depending upon the number of users and the number of tracked plays that someone would have within the environment itself. So I think that's sort of how they're taking it to market. We're working with them to do that as well. I wanted to leave some time as well for questions. So if there are any questions that folks have, I would greatly appreciate it. If there's a question I can't answer, I'd be more than happy to take that back to the research team at Rally and OnCue and get that answered for you. Are there questions?
All right, give them a minute. They're often slow to respond. They also are slow typists. Well, I think you amazed them. Oh, there you go. Ramona's got a question for you, John.
So how would we go about grading the students? One of the things you could do that we're beginning to see in some of the pilots is folks using engagement as a tool, as a grade. So, you know, what is the scoring that they're getting per student? And again, remember, we're at the beginning of this journey. So understanding the measurements and understanding how we might translate that into a grading format. Obviously, we want to work with institutions and other folks on how you can translate that. I would see it very much so, like very similar to the way in which one might use homework or other interventions within coursework. it wouldn't be a huge amount of the grade, but you would want to give them some sort of acknowledgement for the effort and provide that. Yes, they're working on the accessibility right now in regards to the ability to pick up the content. Absolutely. They're working on all that as we speak in regards to the technology behind it. And so I'm not sure if they'll have it out when they begin that SaaS model, but I know that they're working on all the accessibility, screen readers, those types of contrasts, those types of things as well within the comment and within the underlying technology. And then, as I mentioned, I wear two roles. I'm the founder of and partner at Access Alliance. There's the information for that, and also acting as a senior director for Rally in regards to this technology and sort of bringing it out to the market for them, helping them understand what's capable with this technology in the areas of education, corporate training, marketing, some branding, some of the other areas. And as I mentioned, I don't know if it's available yet, but if you go to the rallyio./landing page, they may already have the ability for you to create a free account there as well. So, and play with the technology. I know that there'll be some limitations on that. I'm not sure what those are yet. I don't know that they've come out with all the limitations on that. And again, if you're interested in working with the software, please feel free to reach out to me at either of those emails there. And my mobile number, my phone number is there as well. So if you have other questions, please feel free to reach out to me and email me. And I can get answers to the questions for that. And as I said, they're coming out with this free version, so folks can test it and utilize it within their environments. Any other questions?
I think we're good, John.
Okay. Well, Bob, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. As I said, folks, they're on the first steps of this journey. We look to continue to help educators and students improve their learning across the board and utilizing this AI and NLP to do so in this very, very critical area of engagement, influence, sentiment within the online learning environments. So thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thanks. And we have another session coming up at the top of the hour. Hope to see you there.